morning. My name is Kimberly, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the CA APM Global Use Community User Webcast. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you, Mr. J.P. Gagan. You may begin your conference.
Thank you, Kimberly, and hello, everyone, and welcome to this APM Global User Community Webcast. A couple of items before we start the webcast and our main presentation. I want to remind everyone that the CA World Conference is coming up in April. CA World will be in Las Vegas from April 21st to 24th. And the APM user community is planning to organize a social event to get everyone together, the ones of you who are planning to attend. So if you are planning to attend CA World Conference, please go to on the homepage of the APM user community, you'll see a poll, and we would like to get your feedback. We're asking some questions about this event that we would like to hold. We're looking at the Sunday evening, April 21st. We are also going to make a ticket. There will be a raffle, and it will be a free ticket to attend the conference. We'll make that available, and we'll let everyone know who is the lucky winner. Also, if you go to that same homepage of the user community, you'll see another, there's a roll call of asking you some information. Again, if you are planning to participate, about who is coming and what your interests are. So next, I want to also let everyone know or announce the next webcast that we will have next month. That will be on March 21st, Thursday, March 21st, and the topic will be predictive analytics with APM and SOI, presented by NEC. As Kimberly mentioned, you can ask questions during the presentation, either on the phone, or you also have that Q&A button on your screen where you can post and ask your questions, and we will address them either during the presentation, and there will be time at the end for Q&A. So I would like to introduce our speaker today, who is an APM user and expert, who will be sharing some best practices for LeakHunter and ErrorDetector capabilities for CA APM agents. Michael Risser is sharing his best practice. So, Mike.
Morning, all. We're going to see if I can get this thing to come up. There we go. All right. I see from the attendees list that there are a number of people out there I know. Hi to folks I've consulted with. Hopefully we'll get something out of this lecture and see what's going on. My name is Michael Risser. I've been around Interscope for 10 and some odd years now, both as a user and later on as a consultant. I've been to a number of your shops, I can see out there from the attendee list. So if you have any questions, you can ask me directly, or you can put them up on that QA button, and I'll keep watching that to see if anybody has anything. So, onward, as they say. LeakHunter and ErrorDetector. LeakHunter is not my favorite tool, but it does have some good points. And one of the things about LeakHunter is that you've got to practice with it. I don't say it enough, and I should, that LeakHunter provides you with an excellent facility for doing what it does. It doesn't do everything, okay, but it does do quite a bit and quite well for what it's meant to be. So we're going to go on and talk about LeakHunter. ErrorDetector is one of my favorite tools in the Wiley toolkit. sorry, should say APM toolkit these days. And you can make an awful lot of headway understanding what your application is doing if it's throwing a bunch of errors by looking at leak detector. Leak detector's also got some things that you want to watch, okay? And we're going to talk about those at the end. Whoops. There we go. As I said, LeakHunter is a valuable tool for you within some limits, okay? And we're going to talk about some of those limits. And we're going to talk about where you can get some real value from LeakHunter. So what I'm going to say here is how to use LeakHunter, how it works, what it will not do, how to implement it, what it tells you, okay? LeakHunter in production, no. But if you gotta, be very careful. And I want to say a couple of words in praise of GC Monitor and Verbose GC. Those two tools, GC Monitor in particular, will give you some amazing information about memory management. There we go. The first part of LeakHunter is, do you know that you have a memory leak? You know, memory monitoring and memory management are really difficult tasks. The JVM going OOM does not always mean that you have a memory leak. On the other hand, LeakHunter can tell you about some really interesting stuff, okay, if you do get an OOM. On the other side, Interscope, my abbreviation is ISCP, has GC Monitor data available, and man, can this stuff tell you what's going on. An ex-CA employee named Sylvain Delbassier, who's now back in France, wrote this thing as an adjunct to Interscope 70 years ago, and it is the best thing going since sliced bread. LeakHunter is a percentage tool. LeakHunter only works on certain things, doesn't work on others. Okay? Specifically, LeakHunter works on standard collections. All right? Your question is, does the application use those standard collections? And are they likely to be the source of a leak? Now, I've said this before, don't run LeakHunter in production unless you have no other choice. LeakHunter has an immense amount of overhead, okay, and doesn't play nice with a number of applications. So the idea is that you have to know that you, honest to God, have a real problem, and LeakHunter is probably the idea or the solution to find out what's going on. And as I started off with, LeakHunter takes some practice to understand what the data is telling you. So one of the best things you can do, and I suggest this to everybody, is get LeakHunter out and run it. See what it does. Okay, run it across a well-behaved application, one you know that isn't leaking, and see how the data looks. How LeakHunter works. LeakHunter watches collections. Collections created by Java classes. I've given a couple of examples here. And if you check the LeakHunter.pbd, you can see the full list of these classes. Okay? That's all it does, folks. All right? It's not going to tell you OOM stuff. It's not going to tell you other things. It's going to tell you that if any of these classes have been implemented improperly, okay, LeakHunter has an excellent chance of figuring this out. What LeakHunter does is he sits there and he watches things being allocated into those classes and taken out of them. And so over time, he will give you his best opinion of whether these classes are leaking. Okay? Now, your question is, does growing, i.e. that some sort of collection is expanding, does growing actually mean leaking? And this is not an easy question. LeakHunter will not, okay, monitor stuff, leaks that are not in collections, not in his standard collection. Okay? He won't do things like watch a simple string concatenation. So if you've got string, A equals A plus B, and that goes on for a while, LeakHunter is not going to see this. Okay? If you've done some sort of extension to one of the standard classes, i.e. created your own custom collection structures, LeakHunter is not going to see that. Now, I was reading the Java manual, and it says, does not monitor subclasses of, the various and sundry other collection classes, but that you could update LeakHunter PPD to do so. Oh, please be careful. Okay. Specifically updating LeakHunter to watch other things implies that you know a good deal about how those custom classes were built. All right. One word of caution, don't take anything out of what's in LeakHunter PPD. Okay. LeakHunter will not tell you, okay, that you have an OOM condition. He doesn't know. He doesn't watch. Okay. And if you want to get a whole lot of more details about exactly what's going on with LeakHunter, go ahead and read the Java Agent Guide, and it's going to provide you with more details. I see that there are no questions so far. If anybody has anything you want to ask, yell and scream.
As a reminder, to ask a question, please press star 1.
Mike, there are 2 questions in the Q&A from Jivan Katekola asking, can LeakHunter detect native memory leaks?
No. The answer is no. He's only doing things for standard Java classes built in your JVM heap. Hi, the voices are not audible. Can the presenter
speak louder?
Hear me?
If you could speak a bit louder, that might help.
All right.
It would help.
Sorry.
Thanks.
And we do have a question in queue. Would you like to take it?
Yes, please.
You have a question from the line of Randall Hines.
Hi, Mike. This is Randall Hines, as you mentioned. I'm wondering about how to get my hands on something like the LeakHunter and the other tool that we're here to meet on. Is this something that's already packaged with the Java agent, the Interscope agent, or is this something that we would have to work with our RCA representatives to bring on site and deploy?
Both of these 2 products are now inherent to the base product. Okay, they used to be extensions. One LeakHunter you used to have to pay for, but I think in version 8. So if you're beyond version 8,
yeah, we're on version 9.
Product. Okay. Yep, they're all standard stuff.
Great, great. That's wonderful news. Thank you for that information.
Sure.
You have a question from the.
Go ahead.
You have a question from the line of Zohar.
Hey, Mike. This is Zohar, Bank of America.
Zohar, how are you?
You mentioned that the LeakHunter has an overhead. Do you have any numbers of what the overhead is?
We're going to talk about overhead in a little bit. And I don't have any current numbers for version 9, okay? And I'll talk to you about the version 8 numbers that I do have later.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
You bet. All right, moving on. We're moving on? Yep. Okay, good. Come on. All right. I'm not going into all the details of what APM LeakHunter tells you. The APM workstation guide has a bunch of details about the meanings of all of the individual metrics. Read them up in there. What I do want to do is talk to you generally about what LeakHunter is going to tell you. And in specific terms, what you want to know is the LeakHunter total numbers, okay, are a general indication of what's going on. in your application. How much activity you've got, how much, how many classes he sees, how many implementations he sees, what's the count in the collections of those implementations, okay? What you're after is these values should be increasing pretty quickly at the start of your JVM, right? And once you've reached a steady state volume, those numbers should level out. If they don't level out, you've got a definite problem, okay? But the idea is that your application basically comes up to speed, decides on how much it's got, and LeakHunter should, the total lines of LeakHunter should flatten out after you've come up to, whatever is normal. All right. Now, LeakHunter provides you an awful lot of information, and specifically it's going to tell you, all right, where the numbers are coming from. You can make a guess by looking at the names of the collections and the names of the fields, but that allocation stack trace information really does tell you what's going on. And you're going to need that to be able to feed back to the developers. Okay, and again, as I said earlier, practice. Before you start using LeakHunters, you've got to know what's going on. And the only way to know what's going on is to get out there and practice, okay, with LeakHunter under a well-behaved application. And I couldn't dig up any current pictures, and so these are old LeakHunter, boilerplate picture kind of stuff. The best deal is to get out there, implement it, and see what happens. All right. So, implementing LeakHunter, now it's a standard piece of the product, okay, simply means adding the LeakHunter PBD to your directives list. You've got to turn it on, enable equal true, and there are a bunch of default settings, okay, like sensitivity 5 and timeout value 120 and ignore n, okay. Leave them alone until you know better. And for my money, I would turn on the stack trace. Stack trace is equal true. All right. Now, if you're using the current version of ISTP, then LeakHunter jar is already in the extensions directory. If you're using an old version, sometimes they didn't put it in there. So you got to make sure that LeakHunter.jar, which is actually the brains of LeakHunter, okay, is in the extensions.
Right. There's time for a question?
Sure.
There's a question from Imad Yurgis, who's asking, other than deploying the LeakHunter PBD, is there anything else that we need to do to deploy LeakHunter? Is there a special console for LeakHunter, or will the data appear normally in the Introscope console?
Okay. To deploy LeakHunter, you need the LeakHunter.jar and the LeakHunter.pbb, okay, and you need to turn it on. Like I'll go back to the last slide. Okay. So, yeah, LeakHunter.pbd into the directives list. Set LeakHunter.enable equal true, and ensure that the LeakHunter jar is in the extensions directory, or the ext directory. That's it. The data itself, which maybe I didn't do a good job here. Whoops. Okay. You can't see my pointer, but in the lower left-hand corner of this slide, you can see highlighted the name LeakHunter, and all of the LeakHunter data will show up in the investigator under that LeakHunter designation. And you can see in this slide on the lower left-hand corner that he's talking about LeakHunter, he's talking about some summary numbers, and then he's giving you names of collections. The first one is highlighted. So all of the LeakHunter data shows up in the investigator. I can't tell. Did that answer the question? All right. Hopefully that answered the question. If there is any more, yell and scream.
Thank you.
And we'll do it. All right. You've got to run LeakHunter in a simulation environment, a performance tuning, or a performance investigation environment. Right? You have to understand the overhead of what LeakHunter is going to do. You have to understand if it's going to be well behaved with your application. Now, anybody who's run a simulation environment, anybody who's run a performance test environment knows how problematic this is. Okay? Getting memory usage understood and to come out right is really difficult. I did this for a number of years at a very large bank. And I know how much trouble this thing can be. But you got to do it. You got to know what your application is going to react. You got to know how your environment is going to react. Okay? And at the worst, you're going to get some perspective on how your application behaves with LeakHunter. All right? And again, and again, and again, LeakHunter, get it out, put it in, practice. I see a question from Brad. Would like a copy of the PPT deck, please. Sure. We'll figure out how to get it to you. All right. All right. If your simulation environment doesn't give you the answers you need, when you're using LeakHunter to try to find out what's going on, all right, you've got a couple of questions to ask yourself. Is this, is LeakHunter the right tool? Am I doing the right thing here? Will GC Monitor or Verbose GC tell me anything? Okay. And finally, should I do this in production? It is a big question because if you're not situated correctly in your production, then running LeakHunter is not going to be fun. Right? If there is no other way, then you're going to have to run LeakHunter in production. You're going to have to be prepared, and you're going to have to be really careful. My suggestion to you is that you run LeakHunter in only one JVM. The old numbers used to be something like 25 to 35% additional CPU and some, it kind of depends, additional memory. I honestly don't have any current version 9 experience, but I was unable to find where they made any significant changes to LeakHunter, so I'm going to guess that it's pretty much like the old version 8. Now, what I would do is I would add 64 or 128 megabytes, okay, to your heap on that particular JVM, okay. I would reduce the workload into that JVM to make sure that you've got elbow room, to make sure that you've got the ability to handle the idea that he's going to suck out more memory and that he's going to consume more CPU, get the work done. And you might look at, although I'm not exactly sure what will happen, okay, that it will extend your response time. Now, my guess is that it might be measurable, this extension to response time, but I'm also guessing that it's probably not visible to your users. Okay. LeakHunter does produce metric data only. Okay, he does not make events. And so the overhead from the point of view of your EM when you're only doing one JVM should be tiny. All right. Questions?
As a reminder, to ask an audio question, please press *1.
Oh, okay. Can LeakHunter, there is a question online that says, can LeakHunter run as a hot deploy, or it's the same old way that we need the JVM restart to enable it? To the best of my knowledge, it is not hot deployable. You do need to restart. All right. If I got that wrong, somebody in CA can yell at me.
I'm pretty sure that's right because the PBD relies on the jar. The jar only gets loaded when the PBD is invoked.
That is the best of my understanding, too. Okay, moving on. One of my, and this is my own little soapbox, one of my favorite tools is GC Monitor. Sylvain did a heck of a job implementing GC Monitor, and now it's a standard piece of the product. And anybody who's not using this is missing out on some really interesting information. GC Monitor produces almost the same stuff as verbose GC, and it's a whole lot easier to consume as GC Monitor rather than trying to read verbose GC, if any of you guys have actually done that. Okay? There is a slightly different meaning to the data because there is a slightly different timing for how GC Monitor portrays the data versus what verbose GC does. Okay? But it is great stuff. Get out there, look at that. You'll learn a whole bunch about your application. Both can tell you a whole bunch. Okay? It's a whole lot easier in Periscope terms. Okay? There is a small overhead. All right? But it's now inherent in the product, and so I doubt seriously if you'll be able to see it. Now, GC Monitor and verbose GC give you an overall memory use, okay, number. It's not going to pinpoint. It's not going to do what LeakHunter can, okay? But it's a great piece of data. And, excuse me, there are a number of good resources out there for understanding what the verbose GC data is telling you. Okay, both from CMG's got a couple of good presentations, and Sun Java will tell you an awful lot about the base JDK. Okay. Questions?
At this time, I'd like to remind everyone, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. Your first question comes from the line of Tim Tsai.
Go ahead,
Hi, this is Tim. Recently, in our shop, we discovered there is some discrepancy between the GC Monitor and the verbose log. Okay, do you have the similar experience before?
If I understood your question correctly, you say there's a difference in what you've seen between verbose GC and what GC Monitor tells you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, I have seen that before. And yes, there is a difference. Okay. Remember that verbose GC is giving you its information at the point of the GC. Okay. As opposed to GC Monitor, which is doing a sampling technique, he's asking basic GC, data 12 times every 15 seconds. So yeah, there's going to be some differences in the way the data is portrayed. Okay. Over the long haul, though, the data is the same. The source is the same. Okay. And I wouldn't get hung up on trying to match an individual data point of GC Monitor with an individual reading of verbose GC.
Okay. Okay. And from your experience, have you seen the total GC time drop to 0 in the GC Monitor for version 8?
Okay. Have I seen the GC time drop to 0 in version 8? I'm not clear what your question is, sir.
Okay, because we have seen that in version 9, okay, and we already have a case open with CA support. But the question I have is, in version 8, it's not a support product, it's a field tag. And so the CA support won't be able to tell us yes or no. And I'm just curious, in your experience, when you look at the GC monitor for the total GC times, have you seen anything like it drop to 0? Because normally it should not drop to 0 unless if the AVM got restarted.
I think this question probably deserves more time than we have at this point. I'll be glad to communicate with you and talk about what you see. Okay.
Okay, that's good.
But maybe we can handle this, offline.
Okay.
You can send me an email at my email address, mike@thewileyWizard.com, and we can talk about this further, or we can have a call.
Okay, sounds fair. Thank you.
Okay. I see a couple more questions here. Can you describe a real-world case when LeakHunter was really helpful? We've gotten pretty limited use out of it. Okay. Back a while ago, I was working at a large institution. Okay. We tried LeakHunter. We found basically that they had, what do I want to say? In certain air conditions, they had not sold the collection, or they had not eliminated an item from one of their collections, without going into too much detail. So LeakHunter told us that this thing was essentially not leaking over a short period of time because we weren't seeing any errors. But when we did see some errors, I forget database something or others, okay, that we could then see that the collection started to leak again. And eventually we figured out, or not me, somebody else figured out, that what they had was a leak only in certain air conditions. So that's my most recent experience with LeakHunter actually doing interesting things. Another question. Can we have a practical demonstration of LeakHunter? Not here on the phone and not by me for sure. I would suggest, get a simulation environment. Get a little something going. You've got it. It's free. Try it.
We do have a question from the phone line.
Okay.
Zohar.
Hey, Mike. Zohar again. The GC monitor is a great improvement on version 9 where we can see stuff with the IBM JDK and Sun JDK. However, half of our WebLogic JVMs running JRocket, and we don't see that GC monitor on JRocket. Is there any plans for the GC monitor to be available on all JDKs?
Zohar, I'm not inside CA anymore, and I think there was a big cheer that went up when CC Monitor did IBM's JDK, and so I think there'll be a big cheer if CA would do that. You might want to direct that at Mary Green. There's an enhancement suggestion, Mary. Okay. All right. And another question that says, will there be a recording of a session available? Yes, there will be. I'm not sure how. Again, contact CA, and they'll tell you.
Mike, the question for the enhancement request, I would propose that you post that on the Ideas section, the Ideas tab on the community website as an enhancement request.
Zohar, you got that? Sorry, he probably can't respond. Okay. We will. He will. I'll encourage him. Okay, moving on.
And all webcasts of the APM user community are recorded, and everyone can access them after this call, maybe later today or tomorrow. And you'll see all the past events, including this one, available there on the page.
Okay, moving on. Error detector, one of my favorite toys. Okay, how does it work? How do you configure it? What does it tell you? The overheads involved and event controls. We're going to talk about that last. All right. Okay. Error detector is inherently part of the agent. You don't have to do anything. It automatically comes up. It inserts code in the system error handler. It sees unhandled exceptions. That's all it sees. Okay. It does not see any, exception handled by try-catch blocks or custom error handlers. This is a tool of last resort. When they missed it, the system error handler gets it. Okay, and LeakHunter gets and error detector gets involved. It does filter through the ignore list. I'm having trouble talking. Okay, and reports that data to the EM as an event. Okay, it has some small amount of metric data, like errors per interval. All right, but its major function is to report events to the EM. It does work with transaction tracer, okay, and you can modify or extend error detector, but be really careful. In the EM, we see event data coming in, and it stores it in EM home/traces. This is basically the traces database, or now called the events database, and it does store some metric data. In the workstation, you can see events data in Investigator, Live Viewer, and Historical Query View. Okay. To configure it, all right, in the agent profile is turned on. Okay. It has a throttle to it. Okay. It has the ability to ignore, and this is a good deal. All right, and the Java Agent Guide will provide you with more details and spells out how to extend error detector with your own code. I really wouldn't do this unless you absolutely totally knew Java and you were really familiar with how AirScope agent coding works. All right, you can extend it. They do give you the information on how to do it. Careful. Bless CA's little heart. They took out the meager amount of information that used to be in the workstation guide, and they just dumped it. So you're not going to find any details about error detector in the workstation guide. Not happy about that. The metric data comes out as errors per interval, some. Most of the errors per interval comes out of the blame point tracer, which is the standard mechanism these days. The only errors per interval that's coming out here is for some servlets and some JSPs. Okay. The events data, which you can see in the error tab of the investigator, will provide you with a pseudo stack trace, okay, showing where the error happened and the error text. And when I say pseudo stack trace, I mean you're only going to get things in this stack trace that are those components which have been instrumented by Interscope. Okay, so this is the basic data. This is from an old picture. So if your eyes are really good, you can see this is from 2008. Okay, but what it'll tell you is that we've got a 404 error, we see it in front ends, okay, and we have some data about what's going on. So if you, on the left-hand side, if you click on any of the items, okay, either the agent name or any specific component, okay, you'll see on the right-hand top an error tab, and you can view all of the errors associated that way. All right. So this thing is telling me that there is an error snapshot, that we had a 404 error, and specifically that we were missing the prototype.js file. You can see it in the URL line if your eyes are really good. Okay. On the bottom, all right, the error is an SQL error out of status servlet, order status servlet, sorry. And you can note the time of the SQL statement start, 1699 MS. Okay. What they don't tell you in the book is how to read that time value. So you can see on the fifth line up from the bottom, it says servlet, order status servlet at 0 milliseconds, i.e. when the clock started for this execution. At 1699 milliseconds, okay, the SQL actually happened. Right? And you can see in pink the error message. All right? In Transaction Tracer, you'll also get the same basic information, and he'll show up as a pink error or pink line in the error detail. I know this is hard to read. Okay? You can scroll to the right and you can see all of the text message, or you can simply click on the text message, okay, press Control-C to copy and store it out someplace. The good part about this business is that once you've got the piece of text out, okay, you can, glom on to part of it and say, hey, I really don't want to see this error anymore. And you can add it to error snapshots.ignore some number, okay, and stick in star, whatever it is you don't want to see, star, right? And you can get the agent to ignore these errors. You can ignore any error you want, or you can add more errors if you want, right? Normally, most people don't add stuff, okay? There are other better ways to do it. But you can ignore errors simply by looking at errors you found here and saying, oh, no more, and add this ignore statement. Obviously, you've got to take the JVM down and back up. Oh, sorry, my fault, wrong one. This one is a hot deploy business. So if you do see the fact that you've got a bunch of errors coming in, you can actually go out and modify the agent in real time and hot deploy a new error ignore. Question? I don't see anybody doing anything. All right. You can also see errors in either the live error viewer or in the historical query viewer by typing in a query that says type : error snapshot, which will, eliminate all the rest of the events and only show you the errors for whatever time frame you're asking for. You're going to get an awful lot of information here, okay? Some of it's relevant, some of it's not. Basically, if you look in the last line where you can see the pink HTTP error code 404 business, that you can see that this happened in the file servlet, which started at 214 milliseconds into the transaction. And if you look down in the URL line, you can see what you're missing, okay, which I can't even read, something or other, template.jsp. Okay. All right. Overhead. There is a small amount of overhead for the agent. Okay. There is some description in the guide about this overhead, and my observation is it's barely detectable. Okay? There is some overhead in the EM. For handling metric data, it's tiny. Okay? For handling event data, it depends on the number of events. Now, if you're a big shop, and you're running multiple JVMs and they're all throwing a bunch of errors, okay, this event data count can get really big really fast. So you got to get out there and monitor what's going on in your events database. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. Okay. Errors are stored in the transaction traces, okay, otherwise the error event database. I see a question. Currently, SOAP vault cannot be ignored. I have an idea in the community to enhance the production of produce this, but no one has promoted it. Can you plug the idea? Steve O, yeah. Error Detector is a really powerful tool. It gives you leverage with your application developers. Now, they're getting all of these errors. Okay, they're showing up in their error logs, but sometimes they can get overwhelmed. And so you, as a performance guy, can get better information, okay, about what's going on in terms of total counts, mostly in terms of total counts. Right? So, yeah, I would big cheers for anything in CA land who can do anything about helping out Error Detector. All right. Okay. Event controls. The Error Detector, if he's throwing a lot of stuff, can jump up the size of your events database kind of mightily. So you do have some controls now in version 9. You had medium controls in version 7, better in version 8, and now much better in version 9. And you can always look at the metrics involved, okay, under Custom Metrics, Enterprise Manager, Data Store, and Transactions. Okay, there are a bunch of metrics in there that will tell you the health of your events database. Your controls for these are located in 2 places. One of them, EM properties, and this is basically the old stuff, okay, that says how long do you keep a trace, data.age equals 14, which means 14 days. When do you do the cleanup of the trace? You do it every 24 hours, optimize.frequency equals 24. And when do you do that? Okay, optimize.time offset equals 2, i.e. at 2 o'clock in the morning. I apologize. Okay. The other set of controls is down in a new file, new to version 9, called APM events threshold.config. And basically, what you're doing here is you're telling him how big the database can be, i.e. 1 gigabyte. Threshold value equals 1024, i.e. 1 gigabyte. Okay. How many events the EM will process, okay, 1250, event limit. Agent trace limit, how many of those events can be from a single agent, okay, and how many error events a single agent can have. So value equals 10. To the best of my knowledge, the default values here work, unless you've got some sort of interesting case. Okay. All right. So here's a little picture of the investigator talking to you about the transactions. So data stored transactions and number of traces in the database, the number of inserts, the number of drops. Okay. So the insert tracking is the total incoming value, how many things I'm watching, how many things this EM is watching. If you get anything in the drop per interval, you know you've got a problem. Okay? You can tell the total number of traces in the database, and you can tell the total database size, TT database disk usage, total size. Okay? All right. So, a little over time, but any questions?
As a reminder, to ask an audio question, please press star 1. You have a question from the line of Randall Hines.
Go for it.
So thanks again, Mike, for taking the time to walk through all this stuff, and I appreciate your answer prior that, and also in the decks here, that this is included in the agent already. It just needs to be enabled. So two things. Is it a possibility to get a copy of this deck? I mean, you had a lot of great technical details that I think we could use to enable it. And second, is this something that we should expect to have enabled out of the box, or would we have to go in and explicitly enable it with those commands and file placements that you mentioned?
It is enabled out of the box. You have to turn it off if you don't want it, and boy, I don't suggest that.
Okay.
Okay. So yes, you inherently get the data no matter what. Now, my real caution about ErrorDetector is the load it puts on the EM. If you've got, misbehaving applications, then you really do need to get a handle on what those applications are doing, and ErrorDetector is the best way, but it's going to cost you for the EM's performance because he's got to handle all of those errors.
Fair enough.
So I love ErrorDetector because I can actually get out in front of the application developer. Here's your error. Here's where it happened. Here's the code it happened in. Okay. And you can send all of that back to them. And you can say, hey, guys, you're doing a lot of this stuff. This can't be helping your application. So you've got some pressure that you can put on the application developers to say, come on, clean up your act. Right? I love ErrorDetector. Now, the thing to do, though, is to, if you aren't going to get any response from your application developers, and some days they've got other priorities, then the one thing you've got to do is keep an eye on the transaction database. If you're getting a lot of inserts, if you're getting a lot of errors, then you're going to have to shut them off. Now, obviously, if you get the same error over and over and over again and the application folks aren't going to do anything about it, then you're wasting both your time and theirs. Okay. Put them in the ignore list. Use that little cheat that I showed you there in that one slide. Copy the error off, and stick a star around it. Okay. And turn it off. And yes, the presentation is available somehow, but I don't know how.
Mike, as far as making the presentation available, would it be okay for those who requested to send you an email, and would you remind everyone of your email address or put it on the screen, and you can buy that way?
The live meeting has a handout option too, if that's a facility you're familiar with using.
You can
attach it to the. I can also attach the deck to the replay.
Okay.
I'm going to scroll back real quick to the first slide. There.
There you go.
You can always yell at me. Okay. All right.
So we can attach the presentation to the replay recording as well, right? But for anyone who has follow-up questions to Mike, here's his contact information.
We're glad to talk. I've been doing this a long time. Always interested to hear more of people's information about direct use, LeakHunter ErrorDetector, or anything else Interscope related. So give me an email, give me a screen. I'll be glad to help.
We did have a question from the phone line.
Okay.
From the line of Kishab.
Hi, Mike. One quick question. Is there a way to export export this error detector data in a report or consolidated at a place? Consolidate it at a place?
No, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Please complete your question.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
Suppose for 2-hour data, if whatever errors I have seen, is there a way to export that at a single place or put it in a report, something of that sort?
To the best of my knowledge, no. I know that some people have made reports out of events. You can certainly get some information out do query historical viewer, okay, and you can get some information out of there by the export function, which will put it as an XML file, and then you could parse the XML file. All right. That, to my knowledge, the only thing I've ever done is use that copy and paste business to get an individual line. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
But you could try and query historical viewer, export it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just basically guessing out loud here.
Okay, that's okay. I'll try that historical. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. I see.
And Walter Kaczynski was asking, you mentioned using the error detector for custom exceptions or processing. Is there any printed documentation that is available for this?
Say again, please.
The question is about documentation on error detector usage, specifically using for custom exceptions or processing.
Oh, to add stuff to error detector. Yes, the agent guide. Oh boy. The Java agent guide used to have some information in it. I haven't done that. I haven't read that. I don't know. If there's anything out there, it's in the agent guide. Sorry, not a very good answer.
All right, thank you. And one more from Juha. Can you use CLI to report error detector events into a file?
I see the question. I don't know that I've ever done that. I don't know. Something to try.
And we do have a question from the phone line.
Okay.
Of Steve Oak.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Mike. On the export of your, this is not a question as much as in the historical viewer, you can export both as an XML that can be brought back into the historical viewer. So if your developers have access to Interscope, they can bring that right back in. And there's also the ability to export it straight as an XML, but more as a text file for those that don't have access to the workstation. So you can do it both ways. I've done it quite extensively to send big lists of errors to people.
Oh, good. Yeah, I know you can get it out both as XML and as text, and therefore you could parse it or hand edit. But I've never actually done it. It's a good deal. Thanks, Steve. Any other questions?
There are no further audio questions.
hopefully this has been of some value to some folks. Get out there and try LeakHunter. Okay, it's a valuable tool, so give it a shot.
Great.
Thanks, Mike.
We're getting to the end of this webcast, the end of the hour, and I would like to thank Mike for sharing his valuable knowledge and expertise around LeakHunter and error detectors today. And I will just remind you again of our webcast next month, just a month from today on the Thursday, March 21st, to hear about predictive analytics with APM and SOI. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. That does conclude today's conference call. You may now disconnect.